Hey, shalom everybody. Shalom. Welcome again to another video. Thank you all to all my subscribers, both new and old. Thank you so much, you guys. I'm going to make this introductory as quick and to the point as possible. This is a continuation of the series that we've been doing on Black Gatekeepers. And basically, this video here, it contains a snippet that I've seen for years, but I wasn't aware that there was more parts to this snippet on YouTube, and I just kind of stumbled across it. So what I basically did was gathered up as many of those snippets as possible, stitched them together, and I'm making one video so that none of this stuff gets lost, just for posterity's sake. So that's what I did. But what you see in front of you, this is a book. If you don't have this book, let me just tell you this. I would not just advise that you get the digital copy of it. Okay, if you want to do that, go ahead and do that. That's the quickest way to get your hands on this book. But I would highly suggest that you buy the actual hard copy of it, because the information in this book, it basically dispels all myths when it comes to what happened to Dr. King and his fall, unfortunately, and all the things that were the mysteries that have been around him. It dispels a lot of that stuff. Not everything, but it definitely dispels on his assassination. And it shines light on the very fact that, yes, he was assassinated, and our government did, in fact, play a role in that. That's why I just find it so, it's really a slap in the face. I don't even know what word I could even use, that this same government would put a statue of him in the mall in Washington, paying homage to the very person that they took part in killing. And yes, basically it came out in that court case that the government was found guilty of conspiring to kill Dr. King. So, I mean, it's just, the dark truths that this nation hides under. The Most High is exposing all these things. And this book has actually been out for some time, but there are many people, younger people, who are not even aware of any of this stuff. So, this is really for the younger people in the audience that really are not aware of this, and so, and for the older as well. You may have just grown up on the legends and the lore of Dr. King, and and that basically you bought into the story that he was shot by this lone gunman. Here we go again with the lone gunman, but not realizing that, no, in a court of law, it was found that our government played an active part in his demise. So what I'm going to do is, like I said, you have this book in front of you. This book here is by Dr. William E.F. Pepper, Esquire. He was actually the attorney for the King family. And I'm going to read an excerpt of someone who was mentioned in one of these clips that you're about to see. In fact, I think it's the first clip. And he was one of the gentlemen that was there on the day that MLK was shot. And his name was Samuel Billy Kyles. Okay. So I'm going to read to you just an excerpt from the book, and then we're just going to go right into the video. Okay. All right, so here we go. This is in the courtroom now. Okay, it says, first he called Reverend Samuel Billy Kyles in response to, and this was the attorney, in response to questions put to him on direct examination. Reverend Kyles described his civil rights experiences in Tennessee and the events surrounding the sanitation workers strike and Dr. King's visit. He said that they were all under surveillance, and he referred to the Richmond surveillance operation, which was conducted from the rear of the fire station. He said that he learned that one of the black officers, he was referring to Willie B. Richmond, who engaged in that activity, was so troubled by it that he became an alcoholic, left the police force, and died, implying that he committed suicide. He gave his usual account of how he went into Dr. King's room about an hour before the assassination, spending the last hour of Dr. King's life with him. He described their conversation, or preacher talk, quote unquote. He gave let's see, he gave an emotional statement of how he had come to believe that it was God's will that he had been present when this great man died. He said inexplicably that Dr. King did not die using drugs or from engaging in some other criminal activity, but because he was there to help the garbage workers. He described how a little old lady came to one of his speeches and told him how she just wanted to shake his hand because his hand had touched Dr. King. Thus, he considered himself blessed to have had this experience. When Lewis Garrison surrendered the witness, Kyles was riding high with his credibility intact. I had decided, this is the author now, I had decided that my associate Juliet Hill Akins, would conduct the cross-examination of Reverend Kyles. Her task was to destroy any credibility that came from him being a pastor. She focused on how he drew pleasure from women, such as the one he described reaching out to him and seeking to touch his hand. Then her questions dealt with Willie B. Richmond, indicating not only that he was alive, but also that he had testified at this trial. Kyles was surprised. The jurors appeared to be amused. He walked him through a previous statement Richmond had made, which refutes his claim to have been in King's room. He had said he simply knocked on the door and had a few words with Dr. King, who then closed the door, and Kyles walked over to the balcony some way down from the room. Richmond stated, and this is Richmond's testimony. Immediately after the invaders left, the Reverend Samuel Kyles came out of the room 312 and went to the room where Martin Luther King was living. He knocked on the door and Martin Luther King came to the door. They said a few words between each other and Reverend Martin Luther King went back into his room, closing the door behind him, and the Reverend Samuel Kyles remained on the porch. And then that was the answer that was given. Okay, here's the question from the attorney. Right. So you're telling us that there from your eyewitness report that Reverend Kyles knocked on Martin Luther King's door at about 10 minutes to 6 or shortly after 10 minutes to 6, said a few words to Dr. King after he opened the door. Then when the door was closed, Dr. King went back into his room and Reverend Kyles remained on you call it the porch, but it was the balcony. And then the Richmond, the guy said, right, the balcony. Okay, so now back to the attorney that's writing the book. Reverend Kyles said that the statement was simply not true. He could not explain, however, why Richmond would lie about these simple facts. Then Juliet played a videotape of the speech he had given on the 13th anniversary of the assassination. In it, he described again how he spent Dr. King's last hours on earth with him and Reverend Abernathy in room 306. Then, as he described how he and Dr. King stood together on the balcony at the railing, he seemed to get carried away, as he said, only as I moved away so he could have a clear shot, the shot rang out. Did you hear that, y'all? Anyway, you're going to see it in this video. The jury and the judge looked stunned. Juliet played the tape 3 times, so it became very clear that Kyles had, in fact, admitted stepping aside so that a shooter could get a clear shot. When she asked him who he was thinking about getting a clear shot, he said he supposed it would have been James Earl Ray. So he's admitting to this. Did you hear this? Did you get any of this teaching in school? In your in Black History Month? Did you see this on TV1? Anyway, let's continue. Whereupon a portion of the videotape was replayed for the court and jury. Reverend Kyles, what preachers talk about when they get together, revivals and all the like. About 5:45, we walked on the balcony and he was talking to people in the courtyard. He stood here and I stood there. Only as I moved away so he could get a clear shot, the shot rang out. Okay. At one point during the cross-examination, Kyle's mouthed silently to her, "You should be ashamed of yourself." The jury was stunned. Some mouths opened in disbelief. When he was dismissed, he walked behind the attorney's chairs and asked Garrison, "What did you get me into?" Garrison replied, "I just called you as a witness." Yolanda King sat through Reverend Kyle's testimony. Now let me see if I want to read the rest of this stuff here. I think that's it. That's all I wanted to read for this thing here. So let me put this book down. And of course, my screen goes out here. Hold on for a second. Sorry about that. The reason why I want to, we're doing this series here is because, again, in this awakening that the Most High is doing right now with his people, there's a lot of things that are being illuminated in this hour. Don't count it as mere coincidence that, that all of a sudden now, some of the same tricks that used to work with us a long time ago when it comes down to election season, now all of a sudden people are starting to call that out. That is the work of the Most High. He's beginning to open the eyes of his people. When you look at people such as Kamala Harris and, people like that who are running for office, Kamala Harris, as we've discussed on this channel, she is part of what's called the Divine Nine. She is an AKA, okay, Alpha Kappa Alpha. And she's part of that. A lot of the surrogates or her supporters in the media, we've also pointed this out on this channel as well, are also part of these different organizations, whether it be the Links, the Boule, or any of these other fraternities or sororities. The biggest cheerleaders that are out there, Roland Martin, that's another one. The biggest cheerleaders for her are part of this organization. Now, these are the same people, or rather not the same people. This is the same organization that played a very active role, and you're about to hear this now. They played a very active role in the assassination of King, but not only that, they were part of a plan to replace King with another quote unquote black leader. And while I'm mentioning black leader, let me just say this. We're on this channel, okay, I want to start a trend here, okay, when it comes to this particular thing here. If I can start any trend, if I can have anything go viral, okay, let it be this. Starting today, I am officially retiring the term black leader. We're going to retire that, okay? We are retiring that because black leader in of itself is a code word by these white supremacists. It's a code word for basically house nigga. That's basically what that's for, because no other people group you will see has leaders, quote unquote. You won't ever hear the media refer to the Asian community, the Asian leaders, or the Jewish leaders, or the Mexican leaders, or the Italian leaders, or the Greek leaders, or name the people group. You will never, ever, ever hear them refer to them, say that they are the leaders of this particular people group. The only people group that you will hear them say that, use that terminology, is us. So it's like a modern day slavery is still happening. So when they say black leaders, that's basically what they're saying. These are people that these powers that should not be, have appointed, have equipped, and financed to do their work. So getting back real quick, so when we talk about Kamala Harris, and this is bigger, as you know, this is way bigger than Kamala Harris, please. But make no mistake about it. The Boule, all these different societies have definitely cashed in. They put all their coins on the table. All their chips are on the table right now as we speak to make sure that she makes it in, make sure that she becomes the nominee. That's why they're fighting so hard. They have gotten together somehow and said, listen, because all you got to do is listen to them. They're saying the same thing. It's like they're reading off the same script. They're using the same talking points to shut people down of independent thought. And so this is way bigger than that. But I just want to say this, and then we're going to get into the video. What you got to be aware, just one more time, let me just say this, is that the Most High is exposing, he is pulling the cover off of all these organizations. He's pulling the cover off of all this stuff because for so long, too long, they always use this point, particularly when it comes to voting. What do they always say? Particularly if there's a Republican in office, or maybe if it's not a Republican in office, they'll always use, hey, listen, we got to make sure we vote. We got to vote. We got to vote because if we don't vote, there's going to be more and more years of racism. They always bring out that dog and pony show of racism. They're always blowing that dog whistle of racism. They're always doing that. It's like a scare to get us to the polls, to come into the power of agreement. We've talked about that. They always use that to scare us into the polls. We are the only people group that they will always scare us, that they have to use fear to get us to the polls. Because in fear, you don't think rationally. You just operate in your emotions. You never see them do that with the Asians. They say, listen, how many times have you ever heard them say, listen, go to the Chinese community or go to the Japanese community? They say, listen, you don't want Nagasaki to happen again. You never hear that. Or, you don't want another Holocaust to happen again. It's only with black folks, so-called black folks, they will always use the dog whistle of racism on the rise, if we don't show up to vote. They do that because they know that's what keeps them in power. And so what you're going to see in these video clips here is basically just how evil these people are. And it's going to be Dick Gregory, and it's going to be Coakley. Hope I'm saying his last name right. You guys, are very familiar with him. He's got a more expansive video out, exposing the boule and all that other stuff. If you haven't seen that, please do a Google search and you'll find it. But listen, what's his name? Dick Gregory said in this video, he said, listen, I want y'all if you get your hands on this video, he said, I want you to make copies of it and spread it far and wide. And that's exactly what we're doing. So I just want to give this introduction so you can really understand, and see what we're dealing with. This ain't just some little old history lesson, but this is something that we as a people are fighting against today. And this is a real war that's happening right now. And these people are getting exposed because no more of this foolishness. No more of these appointed leaders. Okay. We don't have leaders like that. Okay. No more. So let's get into this video. Let me just say this about this video too. These video clips. Unfortunately, there are some parts in here where the quality is really not that good. What I would recommend is, if you're not really hearing it clearly, use some earbuds and perhaps it'll come out a little bit clearer. Okay, so that's just the quality. That's all we got to work with, unfortunately, because of how old the video is. But just keep that in mind. That's not my doing. That's just how the video was. Okay, so without further ado, let's go ahead and get into this video and spread the word, y'all. Spread the word. It's coming down. All of this stuff is coming down. So let's get into the video.
I was at the trial in Memphis. I want to show you all quickly, explain to you why that jury of 6 blacks and 6 whites after 3 hours came back and found that white boy guilty of conspiring to kill Dr. Martin Luther King. And they went further than that. And they also said there was some co-conspirators, black folks, unnamed, that was involved. I want to show you a little 3-minute clip of the minister that Dr. King was going by his house for dinner. He was due at 7, but they had to move it up because 7 would be a little too dark to shoot somebody. So they moved it to 6 o'clock. 2 years ago at a press conference in Memphis, I get a call. And they said, so-and-so is thinking about killing so-and-so, so-and-so. I said, what? They said, well, he said something at a press conference. I said, put him on the phone. I said, whatever you do, get that film. Because once NBC realized what this brother had slipped and said, we never get our hands on the paper. What you fixing to see now went into the evidence in the King trial where they brought a wrongful death suit, and I'll explain that to you quickly in a minute. But what you fixing to witness now is the man who came by to get King to take him to dinner. And 30 years later at a press conference, he slipped, because God do baffle your mind sometimes. You look,
some of the activities are geared especially for the young who did not have a chance to get the feel or to know what the civil rights movement actually was about. Even as they marched, now they could have stopped in a hotel, but when you think about marching from Memphis to Jackson or Jackson to Memphis, there were no hotels. You stayed in churches, you stayed in people's homes, and that's how we got over, that's how we got through. The struggle was a spiritual struggle. You couldn't pay people to do what we had to do. You couldn't pay people to stand before mad dogs and fire hoses and billy clubs and cattle prods. It was strictly a spiritual and moral movement. So we wanted that dimension to be in the pilgrimage to Memphis. We will revisit the mountaintop speech site. That's the Mason's Temple, where Dr. King made his last address, which he almost didn't make, because the night that we were having that rally, there were tornado warnings, and he was behind on the Poor People's Campaign. And he said, "You guys go on over and have the rally. I'm going to stay at the motel and work on the Poor People's Campaign." When we got there, and Dr. Abernathy walked in, and Jesse Jackson walked in, and I walked in, and others, people started clapping because they thought Martin was behind us. And so Ralph's preacher said to him, "This is not our crowd." And he went to the phone and called Dr. King. And that any of the marches that we had in those days, you have an opportunity to bring the children and bring the family and march with us. And when I finished sharing with them the last hour of Dr. King's life, a hurry, but that gave me the wonderful privilege of spending the last hour on earth. 3 preachers in a room, Abernathy, King, and Kyle. And we spent that last hour together in room 306 at the Lorraine Motel. The press is always curious, and writers, what went on? What did you talk about? I say, we just talk preacher talk. What preachers talk about when they get together?
y'all pay real
Revivals
attention
and all
to
the
what
like.
you're fixing to hear now.
About 5:45, we walked on the balcony, and he was talking to people in the courtyard. He stood here and I stood there. Only as I moved away so we could have a clear shot, the shot rang out.
Thank you.
I turned around and there's nothing back on the balcony.
Listen. Oh. Wait, listen. Listen. 30 years later, this brother never realized that he would slip and say that. Do you know what happened when you're sitting in a jury room about a conspiracy and this piece of film is introduced? He stood here, I stood here, only as I moved away so he could have a clear shot. The shot rang out. This was the brother that he was going by his house for dinner. Now, to my brother Matty, you will have a copy of this tape. I'll get it back to you. And what you should do is make copies. See to it, because this is a very valuable. And y'all need to send this tape to people all over this country. So this was the trial that went on that the press didn't want to report because they couldn't. Huh? They couldn't. And so we have to stop getting mad and upset because the same system that's killing us refuse to tell us the truth. You have to use your own given, God-given intelligence. If we was all over in Germany today walking down the street and we see this big old building and it's named after Adolf Hitler, you don't have to be too smart to realize something evil is going on inside that building. But how come you don't understand that when you walk down in Washington, D.C. and see that big old brand new FBI building named after J. Edgar Hoover? How come we don't know something evil is going on inside that building? Let me briefly tell you some of the things that you overheard. The trial should have lasted a day and a half. It lasted 30 days. The black press in Memphis didn't even show up. Let me tell you how this trial came about. About 6 years ago, a white man named Lloyd Jarvis, who probably, now this is just my philosophy, who probably was told they're fixing to blame the King murders on you. So he went to ABC, and they did a whole session with him, telling them how he was involved and what the conspiracy and who it was. And then they never ran it. And so now he's running for his life. So he goes to the King family, and he tells them the same thing that he told ABC. He tells them 3 times, and the 4th time, Andy Young. And they filmed it, they taped it. And he said, I was given $100,000 by Frank Liberto, who was the mafia puppet who ran Memphis for the big mafia boys out of New Orleans. So it was Frank Liberto, he said, that gave him $100,000 to set up the whole mechanism for killing King. In the building right behind the Lorraine Hotel with the courtyard bumped into, Lord Jarvis had a restaurant called Jim's Grill. He also said that at the first meeting, here's who was there, so-and-so was there, so-and-so was there, and let me tell you, there was some black folks there too. The black man in the very famous picture that was leaning over Martin Luther King, Merle McClellan, he was there at the first meeting. We didn't know at the time his job was to do 2 things. One was to point everybody in the wrong direction. It was him that pointed and said the shots came from there. Not only was he an undercover cop, he was so undercover that his paycheck didn't even come from the Memphis Police Department, came from the utility company. And now tonight, as we sit here, he's a CIA agent. His other job was to infiltrate a little group of little juvenile thugs. They call themselves the Invaders. And y'all got to be careful about what y'all join just because they're yelling and screaming about Whitey. Y'all got to be careful about what kind of evil, nasty black folk you get around that want to go blow up something and then wonder why you get arrested on your way there. Martin Luther King was preparing for the Poor People's March in Washington, D.C. You had many senators and many Congress people said, we don't think he should come here because we are afraid of the amount of violence that will be created. Martin Luther King's answer to that was, I've led demonstrations, there's been violence, but it wasn't on our side. It was people attacking us. Now, if I'm going to be blamed for that, then there's something wrong. And so they decided that they would create a violent situation. And Merle McClellan, the undercover Memphis cop, had also infiltrated the invaders. And it was when King came in for one day to lead that march. One day. To lead that march. One day. And it was their job to see to it that it broke into a ride so King could no longer say that I've never led a march that led to a ride. And that was to force him to come back for a second march so they could kill him. And so, all at once, the King family decides to sue Lord Charles on a wrongful death suit. Not that they wanted any money, so the first time the truth could be validated and documented. So there's a lot of people upset about the Truth and Reconciliation Committee in South Africa, but 100 years from now, because of that, 100 years from now, nobody has to say, let me tell you what those black folks say they did to them. They can't say that now because white folks came and testified on the oath that this is what we did. Because of this trial, no longer will anybody be able to say, these conspirators allege this to have happened. It's documented under oath. They subpoenaed the captain who was over the fire station, which was across the street, firehouse number 2 from the Lorraine Hotel. 34 years later, he's 34 years older, 7 years old, fat, getting ready to die, wanting to find Jesus. So he came and raised his hand and told the truth. Would you give your name? Yes. How old are you? What's your occupation? I'm retired. What was it before you retired? The Memphis farm. What was your top rank? Battalion commander. Where were you on April the 4th, 1968 when Martin Luther King was shot? Said, I was in charge of the fire station across the street from the Lorraine Hotel. Did you notice anything different that day? Yeah, early that morning some people came and introduced themselves as Army intelligence. Said they'd like to go up on the roof and put King under surveillance. What'd you do? I led them up to the roof. What did they have with them? They had large containers, small containers. What do you think was in the containers? I don't know. What do you think? Well, it could have been stuff to take motion pictures, still pictures. Could the containers held high paparazzi? Yes, they could have. And then what happened? Well, later that day when the shot rang out, they were still on the roof. So we know that the United States government not only had pictures of Martin Luther King being killed, they also had pictures of the person that did it. So then what happened? So then I rushed across the street and ran up the steps where King was laying on the ground, and I helped put him on the stretcher. Said, did you get to see the wound? Say, yes. Would you describe it to the jury? Say, the wound was going up, which means he had been shot from down here, not up there. He's a white man who ran the fire station, who probably 30-some years ago couldn't care if King lived or died. He's a white man sitting there saying to 6 blacks and 6 white jury that, yes, I saw the wound and the wound went this way. And the next one that testified that he had interviewed people from military intelligence, the 111, the 209. The 209 is so vicious, they were scared of CIA. And the 184, that's the sniper team, that's the Rangers. When they had to admit they was there, they say, well, we was there as a backup, and that leads you to believe they was talking about to back up in case the security broke down. They was there to back up in case that hit didn't hit, they was supposed to take him out. That's what the jury heard. Lord Jawa's defense was real hip. There was so much overwhelming evidence that there was a conspiracy. His defense was, yes, I was part of a conspiracy. I just didn't know the person that I was supposed to have killed was Martin Luther King. And what made that so beautiful, it meant that they couldn't object to none of the stuff that was going because they wanted everybody to know what we knew, that it was a conspiracy. He just didn't know it was Dr. King. 70 witnesses they got to hear, plus to see that film. They got to listen to Earl Clark's wife. Who was Earl Clark? Well, when the shot rang out, the dude who shot took the rifle and gave it to Lord Jawas, and he took it through the back of his restaurant window, and then he jumped over a concrete embankment, and there was a black cab driver called Butler, cab 58. He heard the shot. He didn't know King had been hit. He got out the cab to see what happened, see this white man jumping over this concrete embankment, so he followed him around the corner and watched him get into a police cruiser. That man who shot King was Earl Clark, Memphis cop. Dead now. But they subpoenaed his wife. She came to defend the good name of Earl. My husband couldn't have done that because he was homesick all that day. At what time did he find out Dr. King had been shot? Well, he found out over his police radio. And then what happened? He realized how serious it was that he had to go in. And then what happened? Well, all of his uniforms was in the cleaners. So I had to go get his uniforms out. Miss Clark, you aware what time Dr. King was shot? Oh, I think it was a little bit after 6 o'clock. Miss Clark, are you aware that the cleaners closed at 5? That's what the jury heard. Huh? That's what the jury heard. There's an FBI agent named Donald Wilson. He's the one that found the Mustang that Lee Harvey Oswald was driving. He found it in Atlanta, and he found some notes in it that he said the minute he read the notes he knew it was a conspiracy, but he called one of the numbers, this is 1968, that was on the number, and it ended up going to a nightclub in Dallas that Jack Ruby used to own, and Jack Ruby is the one who killed Lee Harvey Oswald, who was arrested for killing Kennedy. He said he got so scared he never turned it in because he thought if he turned it in and they know he looked at that, they would kill him. This is the FBI. And this is who we have to deal with every day. Those of us out here in the movement have to deal with folks who are a white FBI agent said, I didn't turn the stuff in because had I turned it in, it probably would have killed me. That's some of the things they heard at the trial. Just to set the record straight, James L. Ray never confessed to killing King. He pleaded guilty. There's a difference. If a cop grabbed me and said, I'll kill all your granddaughters if you don't say you took that purse, now plead guilty. A confession means you have to know some of the intricate details that nobody else knows but the police who was there investigating it and the person that did it. He never confessed. This document went into the records. He had probably one of the best defense attorneys that had ever lived in the history of the planet at the time. His defense attorney was called Percy Foreman from Houston. Lawyers used to come in from all over the world and just go to this bar where he used to hang out and just sit and listen to Percy talk. He was James L. Ray's lawyer. James L. Ray was coming up to be sentenced on March the 10th. Here's the letter that Percy Foreman, James L. Ray's lawyer, sent him on March the 9th, 1969. Percy Foreman, Houston, Texas, March the 9th, 1969. Mr. James Earl Ray, Shelby County Jail, Memphis, Tennessee. Dear James Earl, you've asked that I advance to your brother Ray, Jerry Ray, $500 of the $5,000 referred to in the first $5,000 paid by William Bradford Huey on January the 29th. Mr. Huey advanced an additional $5,000 at that time. I had spent in excess of $9,500 on your case. Since then, I have spent in excess of $4,000 additional. But I am willing to advance Jerry $500 and add that to the $165,000 mentioned in my other letter to you today. In other words, I would receive the first $165,500, but I would make the advance to your brother of $500. And this advance also is in contingent upon your plea of guilty at the sentencing tomorrow on March the 10th without any unseemly conduct on your part in the courtroom. Here's a man's lawyer that told him, your father 30 years ago jumped bail. We're fixing to put him in jail. If you don't plead guilty, I, your lawyer, personally will see to it you get the lecture chair. And all the way, we're trying to explain how y'all got all this money. So the government is going to say that your brother and you robbed banks. So he's going to jail if you don't go in and plead guilty tomorrow. The jury got this letter from his lawyer, promising him $165,000, but it was contingent on him pleading guilty. Thank God to the King family. Thank God to William Pepper that handled that case. Thank God to everybody out here and the many people that died. His brother was murdered. They said he drowned in the swimming pool. Dr. King's brother, because he was questioning King's death. A.D. They tried to kill Coretta in the church and missed her and killed Dr. King's mother and made like it was some little crazy lunatic guy that came down. And yet the King family kept on moving. Never born with millions of dollars. Never had the glamour that the Kennedy family had, and yet the Kennedy family haven't spent one nickel trying to find out what had happened to them Kennedys, including that funny little thing that went down with John last summer.
Thank you.
And so I say to you tonight, make no doubt about it, we are in one of the most evil, nasty, vicious, insane, ungodly, unethical systems that's ever existed in the history of the planet. And not only will they kill black folks, they'll kill white folks that look like they're going to show us in a certain light. How many of y'all in here saw the movie The Green Mile? Thank you. How many of y'all didn't like it? We'll go back and see it again. I've seen it 13 times. And when you go back and really see what that movie's about, then you realize why Stephen King was hit with that truck. And then you realize why 2 months ago Stephen King had a press conference and said he'll never write again. And then you realize last Friday, this guy that got all kinds of bad records of driving went into court, one of the most powerful writers that ever lived, and got set free. And I'm going to say to you again, those of y'all that didn't like the movie, you should say a prayer that your mind will be open to see what you really saw. And those of you that haven't seen it, every day that goes by without you seeing it, you do the 70 trillion cells in your body a disservice.
What's the name of the movie?
The Green Mile. Who saw it? You remember what the black man's name was? John Coffey. And those initials is J what? Go back and see the movie. And then read the New Testament, because that movie is the story of Jesus Christ. They just took a mentally retarded nigga and made him Jesus, and most of y'all didn't even see that, because y'all would expect a Ron Brown type nigga to be made Jesus. Huh? Huh? That white woman laying in the bed, that was Mary Magdalene. Y'all go back and see it. Those of you that didn't understand. Jesus Christ wasn't healing. He was pulling demons out of people, and he cast them into pigs, and the pigs went crazy. In that movie, he pulled them demons out and cast it into that pig cop, and he went crazy. Y'all go back and see that movie again.
Oh, yes.
In the Bible, when Jesus was put on the cross, he was hung between two thieves. That was the two guys that got executed ahead of him.
Yeah.
And the one thief said, when you go to heaven, will you remember me? That was the Indian brother that said to Tom Hanks, if I repent now, will I be free? Y'all need to go back and y'all need to start breaking code. But y'all can go, y'all like Matrix. Everything I see, like Matrix. Because they showed a black woman and a black man that had the finest mind in the history of the planet, but the white boy was the savior. Huh? I ain't met a black person that didn't like it. How can you like that filth? And here a white man sit and took a mentally retarded nigger and made him Jesus Christ. And because of that, they tried to kill him. And when he said, I leave here and I join my Father in heaven.
He was the person that Proctor was willing to help, since Proctor is the one who was picked to replace Martin King, but Jesse is the one he trained. If you had spent all this time on putting him in place, and you ain't got nobody else around Martin. Now, Andy was supposed to be shot with Martin, but Andy wasn't on the balcony. He was on the floor, so he didn't get it. Ralph was inside, so he didn't get it. Key point, if you spend all that time, and Martin's about to say you are agent, do you understand that you got to press go on the assassination? Because now Martin is so continuously condemning you, you got wiretaps everywhere. And we know what he said about Jesse in front of everybody, but who knows what he said when it was just him and Ralph? How much more severe was his accusations? Such that if you didn't kill Martin, of white limitations don't run out on murder. Okay, let's let this run, and then we're going to go back and look at it again in straight speed. Look at.
He won a few times.
Right, look at Jesse. Martin still won't acknowledge him.
Usually when he finished his speech, he was coming.
Yes, go back. Now I ask you, when you look at it, is that Jesus or Judas? Jesus or Judas?
He won a few times that I saw him visibly shaking himself.
Nobody would touch
He
him.
was caught up in it. But
Just
never
let it run, let it run.
Caught up as he was that night.
Now we're on the day of.
How he spent the day.
Now Jesse done went and told them, look, you better move now.
Reteaching nonviolence.
I'm running out of time. This the Last Supper.
Making sure that everybody was focused.
I spent the day in court and convinced the judge that we could put together a nonviolent demonstration. When I came back to the motel, he said, "Where have you been? I've been looking for you all day long." And he picked up the pillow off the bed and he threw it at me. I was trying to explain to him that I'd been in court, and he said, "Don't you know you're supposed to call me? You need to let me know what's going on." I said, "Look, I was on the stand most of the day." And he was just feeling good. And every time I'd offer an excuse, he'd pick up another pillow and throw it at me. So after a little while, I just started picking them back. And everybody sort of picked up pillows, and we had just a very childish pillow fight.
And then the last one. Dr. He always liked to eat catfish at the little Rainbow Town. And Miss Lady set him up a platter. And Dr. Abernathy was upset because she only had one platter. And the king said, "Hush, ma'am." And put the plate in the bed. And said, "Everybody, get something off of this plate to eat."
See these men break up trying to tell that story.
Dinner was to be served at my home at 6 o'clock. I went to the room.
They brought him on the balcony at 3:06.
I said, "Oh,
He
yeah,
was shot with a 30-06.
He said, "Oh, no, I called the house and dinner is not until 6, so we are in no hurry." I said, "Oh, my goodness." But by doing that, it gave me the wonderful privilege of spending the last hour of his life in room 306. He and Ralph Abernathy and myself. Then he and I went on the balcony. Ralph was still inside, and he was greeting people he had not seen.
I was in the parking lot, and we were suggesting that it was cool, and maybe he ought to go back and take a top coat with him, just in case.
I heard him above me.
It's my man Hosea.
And we had a limousine. I could touch the limousine. Had been loaned to us by one of the local funeral homes. And I heard a voice, the guy who was driving the limousine. He said, "Dr. King." Dr. King said, "Yes, Jones." He said, "Although the car is on, it's chilly. I recommend you get your coat." And the last word he said in this was, "Okay, Jones, I get my coat." And I was done said, "Pow!"
Stop. Oh, stop. Go back. Key point. Let's go back. There's the maid right there we were looking for. There's the cart. Oh. Okay, let's freeze it at the highest point where Jesse's back is in the... Right there. Stop. There we go. There's Jesse Jackson. There's the maid. There's the cart. There's the white boy, Lau, L-A-U-E, head of the community strike, a member of the Community Relations Service of the Justice Department, which spies on racial tension. His boss was Roger Wilkins, the nephew of Roy Wilkins. There's Muriel McCullough, the FBI, CIA, Memphis Police Department informant, who now works for the CIA. There's Martin King laying there with the towel over his face. Brother, I appreciate this pointer. This really helped out a lot. There's Ralph. There's Andy. Now, why is Jesse running up this way when everybody else came up that stairway and went that way? Because he had to make sure that room 316 and 317 didn't have no remnant of invader running out of it. Remember, he had that could have been the invaders running down that ramp right there. And when those people start that phony pointing, maybe the invaders might have went, no, down there. You understand? Because the invaders had what? Okay. Now, there's the maid. There's the cart. You see that cart? There are the wheels. You understand at 6 o'clock you ain't changing no beds in no motel? Check. Okay, let's let it run. There's a good shot of McCullough. There's Martin with the towel over his face. There's Martin again.
I looked up and didn't see him on the balcony, except that I saw his shoes sticking out the end of the balcony. All of the police, instead of going to where the shot came from, they were all coming to see what happened. So the picture on the balcony was us trying to say it came from over there.
Stop. Stop. There we go. That's good. There's that phony point. There's Jesse's head right there, making sure that he ran up there and gave a phony pointing. Now here's the problem with the people pointing. All of the people pointing were this way, looking up to Martin. The shots came from behind them, whether from the bushes or from the rooming house, it was behind them. Not one single person said they turned around and saw somebody or at the rooming house. Those that even saw anybody, Solomon Jones, Earl Caldwell, New York, saw somebody moving in the bushes. Check? So how is it that those with their back turns suddenly become so definitive on something they didn't even see? You understand? It's not logical that they're primary sources for a focus. Okay, we can turn the lights down. It was a script, right? So, and Andy's recanted his false pointing.
And covered him from his neck down. Someone had a towel put to it. Blood was just everywhere. I went out in that yard and I started walking. And all...
Now listen how mad he was.
All the hatred in my life, which was a lot of hatred, came up in me. I wanted to reach into the air and take molecules, protons, electrons, and make me a gun and kill me some white people. Because I thought it was right.
That's my man.
Kill them. They came running across there. And I just, oh God, this would kill. I want to kill, I'd have died to kill. And I started thinking, you promised them that you will not do.
Okay, now watch this. After so much pressure being put on Jesse Jackson, Tim Russell of Meet the Press puts Jesse on April 5th, 1998, and takes him right back to that moment we just looked at. And who did Martin say speak for him that night? Who? Okay, listen to this. Turn it up.
Days ahead. But it really doesn't matter with me now, because I've been to the mountaintop. I don't mind. Like anybody, I would like to live a long life. Longevity has its place. But I'm not concerned about that now. I just want to do God's will. And He's allowed me to go up to the mountain. And I've looked over. And I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you. But I want you to know tonight that we as a people will get to the promised land.
You hear Jesse hollering, go ahead, go ahead. The loudest affirmator, you know. Now,
As he concluded his speech, he walked behind, and there, as you see,
stop.
on the shoulders.
Now, what's happening? NBC, Meet the Press, the most watched Sunday news program, goes back to this moment that we're out teaching is a point of distrust and evidence of Martin's dislike to Jesse. They go right back to that spot, put him right on Rockefeller's NBC, toss that ball right up and say, Jesse, now when I toss this ball up, I want you to stuff it home. So he puts a circle around Jesse's head and a circle around Martin's head, calls it close, and says, you were one of Martin's closest associates. What did Martin King say to you the night before he died? What's up, Black?
Lewis Jackson. What did you say to Dr. King at that moment? Do you recall?
Yeah, back it up and get that sound in there. And Jesse gets to holding his eyes all up funny like in the negotiator. Gets to.
So I'm happy tonight. I'm not worried about anything. I'm not fearing any man. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord.
As he continued to speak, he walked behind, and there, as you see, tapped on the shoulders by one Jesse Louis Jackson.
Highlights two faces and
At that moment, you recall?
wipes Ralph out.
It's difficult to express it because I think we were all crying. It's different in that the minister sitting at the right, Reverend Ben Hooks, Reverend Count Lovers, men were crying. It was kind of different. And like we realized he was under this burden, like he had relieved himself. So he tried not to come to church to speak. He acted asked me to come to speak. I said, and this was not to go with me. So we went together.
Stop.
And the crowd.
What did he say? He said, as you know, it was men crying, Ben Hooks and Billy Kyles, and as you know, he asked me to make that speech that night, and I said I'd only make that speech if I can take Ralph with me. Now, here's the point. There would be no need to do no stupid stuff like that unless something else was going on that compelled the need to give him a chance to reconstruct history, to protect his face from the faceless people who got the facts. There would be no need to do this. It just wouldn't be a need. Okay, let's go back, let's hear it one more time, and then we'll pull that one out.
And Dr. King came. So he got up there without notice and gave a very formal...
No, you got to go back a little bit.
Definitive.
And this is the book, The Bureau, that William Sullivan wrote, where he says it's Proctor, not Pierce.
Because I think we were all crying. It was different in that the minister sitting at the right, Reverend Ben Hooks, Reverend Count Lovers, men were crying. It was kind of different. And like we realized he was under this burden, like he had relieved himself. So he tried not to come to church to speak. And he actually asked me to come to speak. I said, on this, Reverend Abernathy will go with me. So we went together, and the crowd cheered. And Ralph said, get to this thing.
Oh, yeah, listen. No, let that go. He says, Ralph says, Jesse, this is Martin crowd.
The church. And called Bernard Lee and Dr. King.
And then he says, and I went and called Bernard Lee. Instead of saying, I said, if Ralph, if you ain't going to make the speech, don't call Martin, I'll make the speech. He says, Ralph says, this ain't our crowd. And I said, let's call Martin.
That was just weeping and wailing. And yet eerie at the end. He almost foreshadowed his own demise.
Okay, this is what you do. Put it on fast forward. Just let it run. Yeah, just let that run a second. And now this is a key point. How hard have they tried to maintain and protect one of the people that they know was in on the assassination? And in 1977, this is from the book called The Man to See. It's by Evan Thomas, and it's on Edward Bennett Williams, a white man who used to own the Baltimore Orioles. If you read that book by Spike Lee on the Malcolm X movie, Captain Joseph talks about Elijah Muhammad going to Benny Williams to try to get the men out of jail who were allegedly accused of shooting Malcolm X. So he was known as a real fix-it white man who could fix a case in a minute. Big time white boy. Also chaired the president's Foreign Intelligence Advisory Board. It's like the outside intelligence people on the inside of the government. Even at one point rumored to be deep throat. That's right, yeah, just let it run. That's Posner. Stop. Let's see if we stop that. Oh, let's go back a little bit. Let's show the face of Gerald Posner, the little mop-headed white boy. Right there. Oh, here we go. Turn on. Let's go a little slow. Not there. That's the Mason Temple. Stop right there. That boy right there, Gerald Posner. He wrote this book right here, Killing the Dream. He wrote this book, Killing the Dream. And on the back of his book is that picture with Jesse, Martin, and Ralph, with Martin looking real puzzled. Can you see that? Okay. And in his book, Killing the Dream, he tries to help out Billy Kyles. Because in William Pepper's book, Orders to Kill, he says that Kyles is a Memphis Police Department informant. So Posner, he's going to defend Billy Kyles, and he puts this in his book. He says, Mike Webb. Said Jordan gained the election? He says here, he says Kyles told, he says, in his book Orders to Kill, William Pepper raises the strong inference that Kyles might have been an FBI informant. It's degrading and insulting, quote, Kyles says, about the author Pepper's accusations. It casts an aspersion over my 40 years in the civil rights movement. I saw how Pepper operates. Now, he says that he's appalled that Pepper called him an FBI informant. Check. But what did I say Pepper called him?
An FBI informant?
No, I said that Pepper accused him in this book, Orders to Kill. See, you got to listen to them somatically. See, they're going to deny something, but they ain't going to deny what they were accused of. In Orders to Kill, this book, William Pepper says that Kyles, he talks to the police chief, Sam Evans, who was running things then. He said, Kyles was one of my informants. Billy Kyles was an informant. Billy Kyles is the one that told the police that Martin King don't need no protection that day. Okay? Billy Kyles is the one that made sure Martin King had his tie on. It was the briefing at 4:30 after Ray was checking in at 4 o'clock that said that friendlies will not be wearing ties, coding the people who were on the government side in the assassination scenario would not be wearing a tie. One guy that night was in an argument with Martin King because he was just insisting that he was not going to wear a tie to go to dinner. Who was that? Jesse Jackson. So much so that the argument is what held Martin King on the balcony so the shooting could go down after Kyles stepped away so they could get a better shot. Check. But my point here is that Posner defends Kyles as not being an FBI informant. The only problem was he was accused of being a Memphis Police Department informant. I mean, to me and you, an informant is an informant. But when you're somatically denying something, make sure it matches the accusation. Check. Let's see. Yeah, there we go. Now, I said we just wanted to show Posner. Okay, you can let it fast forward. Okay, now, very important point. You can turn the lights up a second, because it'll take me a minute for that to get to the spot I need. In 1977, this is from that book, A Man to See, on Edward Bennett Williams. And this is Edward Bennett Williams says that Jesse Jackson came to see him because he thought he was in trouble with the U.S. government for misappropriating $1 million of the Push XL money. Page, for the record, page 464. When the establishment turned on Jackson, he came to Williams. In 1977, Senator Hubert Humphrey had seen a piece on 60 Minutes describing Jackson's attempts to motivate inner city youth to get an education. Humphrey urged HEW Secretary Joe Califano. Now that's important that he was head of HEW, now Department of Health and Human Services, because Joe Califano worked for the U.S. Army at the time Martin King was assassinated. So he was he was the legal advisor to the Secretary of the U.S. Army, and the Secretary of the U.S. Army was Cyrus Vance. His military attaché was Al Haig, and his legal counsel was Joe Califano. Not one single book on any King assassination or Kennedy assassination appropriately brings up the role of Vance, Haig, and Califano. So now Califano is on the inside, having been an assassin. Now he's going to help Jesse Jackson, having been an assassin. And Jesse Jackson goes to Califano and says, Jackson, gratefully asked Califano for $25,000 grant. Califano told him he needed, quote, $1 million. Now, how many white people you ever met? You asked them for a quarter and they gave you $100. You ever met a white person do that? So it's strange. Jesse would walk into the government, ask for a $25,000 grant. Califano told him he needed $1 million and then proceeded to give the black leader $6 million. Of the $6 million, he misappropriated $1 million. Now the feds got him for misappropriation of funds. He's $1 million missing. Reagan becomes the president. Jesse gets scared. He asks Edward Bennett Williams to talk to Reagan to cut him a deal on the $1 million. Edward Bennett Williams says, when the federal auditors asked to look at Jackson's books early in the Reagan administration, they found chaos. Jackson's organization, Push XL, see, you saw that other thing said Rainbow Coalition. When Push had to pay back the money, he left the leaned organization, L-I-E-N, lean, like lean on your debt. He left the organization that had a lien on it and went to Washington and set up another organization. When Push paid back the lien, he leaves Washington and sets up Push Rainbow Coalition. Check? Okay, because you got to watch him. He's a magician. But the white man is his Merlin. Jackson's organization, Push XL, was unable to account for $1 million of the money. The matter was referred to the Justice Department. Jackson came to Williams claiming that he was a victim of a vendetta by the Republicans. The case was dragging on, producing unflattering newspaper stories at a time when Jackson was trying to raise money for his 1988 presidential campaign. And Williams says that when he talked with the Reagan administration, he said quite the contrary. They were not only not trying to arrest Jackson, but had favorable viewpoints of him, so much so that they cut a deal to pay back $550,000 of the misappropriated money at $125,000 a year. And again, as I said earlier, that's when Jesse left Chicago, went to D.C. Just a case in point. The only point to that is no black man would ever be allowed to pay back a misappropriated grant when Abernathy's son just went down for $1,500. Now, I just want to keep that in line. Now, let's go back to something else very critical. Washington Post story. This story is dated July 12, 1999. And the story, which I've now collaborated from the declassified documents that I have, FBI examined private life of King's successor. It says that after King died, the FBI began to investigate Coretta Scott King, Ralph Abernathy, and Andy Young. They emphatically said, we cannot trust these three, and we must do everything we can. They dropped the investigation of Coretta. They then went on to do to Andy and to do to Ralph what they had done to Martin. That was on April 12th that they signed the memo. On April 12th, I'm going to show you Jesse Jackson announcing that every time there's a crucifixion, there's a resurrection, saying that he is the resurrected man. Okay, what's that other tape you got there, Mr. Brown? Let's put this one in. Okay, let's put that one in and take it backwards a little bit. There's no other tape that back there that you have? And that one is still rolling? Okay. Now, Jesse's a strong proponent of the no Raul theory. And again, I showed you when I was here last.
We were totally dependent on Dr.
Yeah, turn the lights down. Now run it backwards. Run it backwards. That's Jackie saying that when the assassination went down, Jesse called her. And Jesse said, Jackie, Martin's dead. You're going to hear about it, but Martin's dead. And Jackie, she says, well, what are we going to do now, Jesse? She didn't say, how's Coretta? She didn't say, how's everybody else? She didn't say, is anybody hurt? She said, Jesse, what are we going to do now? Something you want to tell me? Okay. Gotcha. Okay. And in this picture, now, yeah, this is Jesse announcing he's available for leadership. But just keep going back, because I want to put this in context. Oh, there's the white man, Don Rose. He's very important, because Don Rose, the white man, just stop it. Freeze, freeze. Oh, right there. Hold him up against the wall. Don Rose, great, great, great. His name, you all don't know him. I'm from Chicago. Don Rose is the white man that you see when you black to get the white media to report on you. You don't go call NBC, you don't call CBS, you call Don Rose, and he gets the media. When I was attacked and fired out of the mayor's office in Chicago, it was Don Rose who coordinated the white media's attack on me, which came May 1st, the Illuminati birthday, 1988. Don Rose is the man that Jesse Jackson left town to meet up, who put him on the Today Show the next morning after Martin was killed to start the discussion that Jesse is the heir apparent to Martin King. And you'll hear him say, I told Jesse, and we reinforced each other, that Jesse was the likely choice. Well, excuse me, Mr. White Man. Are you in the SCLC? And doesn't it seem odd, Mr. White Man, that outside of the FBI, you're the only other white man that feels it's your job to pick the black man to run the black organization? See, it takes a lot of arrogance for me to stand here and say who's going to be head of the next ADL. Lieutenants of Satan. That would be like, well, you ain't even in the group. You can't even vote them in. But everybody don't know Don Rose. He's another one of those white people of the Jewish religion that got their fingerprints on the King assassination. And you don't know him. There used to be something in Chicago called Triple C. And Don Rose was the front man behind Al Raby, who was one of Martin King's associates, one of Harold Washington's associates, who died writing the resolution for the Black Jewish Coalition condemning Steve Coakley on November 25th, 1989. Al Raby dies laying on the resolution condemning me. Whatever that was struck his ass dead with a heart attack at 155 pounds, 5'9". Okay. Now let's keep going backwards. Let's just keep going backwards, because I'm going to show you Jesse in the courtyard. Now remember, we saw the people falsely pointing. For the record, in this picture is the man Raul, who's picked out of a lineup by a white woman named Grable, and Raul is standing next to Lee Harvey Oswald, who's standing next to Clay Shaw. Point being that the people who killed in the Kennedy came around for the king. Okay? Same squad. Notice Jesse, what is he? Does he have a tie on? Now remember we heard, stop right there. That's Calvin Moore. Oh, stop right there. Look at Jesse, no tie on. That ain't important yet. That's Ben Branch. Jesse wouldn't wear a tie that night. The briefing to the military men is friendlies will not be wearing ties. Ralph had on a tie. Martin was made to put his tie on. But Jesse emphatically wasn't going to wear no tie. And when we look at the people